We are live. We are live. Perfect. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ooh, let's make sure. Oh, yeah, we're good. All right, y'all, let's get right here to it. Most people think being broke is the worst thing that can happen to them, right? Like, who wants to struggle with their finances, right? But what if I told you it's actually one of the greatest blessings if you change the way you look at it? Today, in this video, I'm going to show you how being broke forces you to build wealth the right way, not through luck, but through systems. And I'll share a few personal stories with you. This is going to be a lot of fun, a few client experiences, and I'll show you how scarcity, i.e., being broke, forces creativity, discipline, and ultimately can help you create financial freedom. All right, let's jump right in here to it, y'all. So, I was, thinking about what I was going to train on. I keep a running list of things that I want to, different content ideas, right? And this content idea, actually, I'm gonna dedicate this one to my wife because we were having a conversation one day, and I'll get into that story here. And I said, you know what? Being broke is a blessing, right? So let me just jump right in here to it. So first, let me take you guys back a couple years, okay? I'm gonna take you guys back to the pandemic, and we all remember the pandemic. Like it's been, you think about it, it's been 5 years since 2020, but we're still. Still seeing some of the aftermath from the pandemic, right? A lot of businesses had to close their doors and never opened up. A lot of folks started business during that time. We're starting to see the headlines, of people, unfortunately going to jail for lying about getting PPP money. That's a whole nother conversation. But let's talk about the pandemic for a second, right? When everything stopped. So for many of us, our income stopped as well. Same thing happened to my wife. At the time, my wife was a massage therapist. The pandemic hit. She wasn't allowed to have, contact with folks. And boom, she went from making really good money, 6 figures a year, to making zero at the drop of a dime. Right. So, and in my case, being an investment guy, not a lot of people were looking to invest during that time because they didn't know where the paycheck was going to come from. So during this time, right, it was a tough time for, just not just, our household, but for the entire globe, right? Everybody, businesses were shutting down, money wasn't moving, people were scared. And here's the deal. I came out of the pandemic with two new businesses that each were doing 6 figures alone. And this is how it started, right? When the pandemic hit, I said, man, there's a lot of people scared right now. So something that I started to do was I started to record a daily video, right? And I said, I'm going to record this for as long as the pandemic lasts. Well, I had no idea it was going to last almost a year. So I didn't record a full year, but I think we got through probably about 60, 90 days. So I started just jumping on daily and giving, financial advice, giving a different perspective, just helping people navigate their feelings and their finances and things of that nature. And I remember on one of the first calls I did, I said, hey, during this pandemic, this is the opportune time to get your finances in order, right? Specifically your budget. And I mean budget in the sense of, knowing exactly how much money is going out, right? So you know, we want you to focus on. I was like, hey, we need to look at your cash flow because a lot of people had a stop on money coming in, or they were afraid to, and spend money because of they didn't know what was going on. So, opportune time to be like, hey, let's sit down and look at our budget. Let's sit down and look at our finances, right? Because when income gets tight, your budget, you know what I'm saying, your expenses may not go away, right? You still got your mortgage, you still got your utilities, you still have your gas and electric and cell phones and Wi-Fi and things of that nature, right? So it's just a great time to slow down because many of us wasn't working at that time or we were working less, to slow down and look at your finances and start to earmark what's a necessity, something that you must have, and something that's, a want, something that you really don't need, but you enjoy having, right? So if you sat down during this pandemic, right, you would look at your finances, be like, man, I can get rid of this, and this. Also, too, your food bill, which is going to go into our next story here, is probably going to be lower as far as eating out, right? Because you couldn't go to restaurants. So going to the grocery store and preparing your food at home, many of us actually saved a ton of money. If you're anything like our household, outside of the mortgage, our food bill is our largest bill of the month, right? Like we have seen a food bill come in around 3, 4 grand, right? Now, granted, that's us eating out and going up top and things of that nature, but that's what we learned during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, I was again able to create two businesses that each do 6 figures by themselves, right? But I did that because, and I didn't even think about it. I started recording these videos, and my team said, "Hey, let's take these videos and turn it into a podcast." I was like, well, do whatever y'all want to do. I'm going to still get on here and provide value and try to help people out during this trying time, right? So, a couple lessons to take away here. When you focus on other people's needs and focus on other people's problems, it immediately opens up the door for you to actually, better yourself. So whether you're bettering yourself, knowing that you help people out, or people start to pay you. So during that time, I was, hey, I'm going to focus on other people's pains and concerns. And I also identified that, it was a lot of money being thrown around from the government, right? The PPP loans and the economic injury disaster loans, right? And people didn't know how to use this money. So I became the go-to source for navigating the pandemic, as well as how to manage and use these dollars that the government were giving. So I started doing webinars. I started to do a deep dive into the loans. I got some of the loans just so I can know how they could work, right? So I could be a product of the product. And lo and behold, now I'm the authority on, PPP loans and economic energy disaster loans, right? And now I'm a light to individuals who are just scared to death. I found out here recently, crazy, right? One of my clients that I CFO for says, Perry, the $300,000 that you see sitting in my account is because of you. And I'm like, well, how was that? We just started working together. They said, well, I was on your webinar during the pandemic when you were talking about, the SBA money that was available. And I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and apply for it because Perry said, we should get access to capital. And she did. So I'm like mind blown after the fact, right? So let me stay here with you guys because this is why, the power of being broke, while broke can be a blessing. When scarcity kicks in, so does creativity. Let me say that again. When scarcity kicks in, so does creativity, right? So if you ever been broke, right? And growing up, I can't say we were broke. My family, I had my mom and pops in the house, right? So I can necessarily say we were broke. I think we were probably middle class, right? They worked really hard to make sure food was on the table and things of that nature. But kind of one of my first broke experiences was going to college, right? It's like, man, okay, so I don't have my paper out here. I'm not working. I'm playing basketball. Like, how do I eat, right? Guess what? You learn how to eat, right? You learn how to, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and have this hot skillet plate sitting in my dorm. I'm gonna make some hot dogs. I'm gonna get some Kool-Aid, right? You learn how to survive when there's scarcity, right? So again, that's a skill set that I was able to move forward. So going back talking about the pandemic, right? I remember the pandemic, right? Everybody's buying toilet paper like crazy. Like we didn't run out and buy toilet paper. That wasn't our jam. But what I went out and bought, I said, these girls are at home. They can't go to school. What we gonna learn is how to make survival meals, right? So we're gonna really learn how to get down on these survival meals. So what did that include? What did that entail? Tuna helper, hamburger helper, box meals, right? And it's not that we couldn't afford those things, but it was an opportunity to be like, hey, we're not eating out. You're going to be home. You know, you need to know how to cook for yourself. So let me introduce you to some of these survival foods, right? Right? Potatoes and onions. You know what I'm saying? Shoot, that's my mom and pop's jam. Potatoes and onions and eggs. Potatoes and onions are cheap. Eggs are cheap. You know what I'm saying? We can have that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? If you know what I'm talking about, put something in the comments, right? If you know about, you know what I'm saying, potatoes and onions and eggs and having that at 10 o'clock at night, right? You know what I'm saying? Like those are survival foods, right? Knowing how to finesse that tuna helper, right? That hamburger helper, right? That stroganoff, right? So at first my daughter's like, ugh, dad. And after they started making it, like, this is really good, right? So again, cheap food, learning how to navigate scarcity, super a phenomenal skill set. So let me kind of bring forward right from 2020 to 2025. True story. So me and my wife were looking at our budget one day, and we just like, babe, we are spending a ton of money on food. I said, yeah, we're wilding. So we was looking at the pieces like, well, how do we fix this, right? Because we were putting the money on our credit card, right? So we can get the points and things of that nature, right? But the money we was putting on the credit card and the balances were the points were not equating to those balances, right? So it's like, okay, we got to fix this. So we still want the points, but we should be paying for our food on cash. Like we should not be financing food. Let me say that again for somebody who did not hear that in the back. You should not be financing food unless it's an absolute emergency, right? You should not be buying, $50 worth of groceries and because you have to put it on a credit card and finance it and didn't pay it off, end up paying, $1,000 for $50,000 worth of groceries because you got to pay all this interest over a period of time. So you shouldn't be financing food, right? So what we decided was we're like, you know what? We're gonna put $1,000, and the way we're able to do this, I'm gonna slow it down and make sure that you guys get it. We were able to put $1,000 every 2 weeks into a food account. Okay, let me see if I can pull up my whiteboard here. So $1,000 into a food account, right? Every 2 weeks. Now, this is how we went about doing it. Okay. We use a system called Profit First. I'm actually a mastery level Profit First coach. So Profit First is a cash management system where you have money coming in and you have multiple accounts. You have this income account that receives all the money from your business. And then you have these other accounts. You have a profit account, you have a tax account, you have a um, owner's pay account, right? And then you have this OpEx account, the account that you pay your bills, right? So money comes into your income account, and then based upon some preset percentages, you then transfer money to these accounts. So for easy math, right? We're going to say, today, 10% here, 15% here. We're going to call this, let's see here. That's what, 25. We're going to call this 50 here. So we got 25 and 50. Boom. You know what I'm saying? Right. Let's make sure that that's good math. We're going to go 10 plus 15 plus 50. Yep. Plus 25. Right. Just to have some percentages in here. So we transfer, you know what I'm saying? So when money comes in through the business, right? We transfer money into the profit account, tax account, owner's account, OpEx account, right? And then what I would do is then I would then transfer money from our owner's pay into multiple accounts as well. So I would have an account for bills. I have an account for me. We have an account for wealth. And I created an account for food. Okay. So from my owner's pay, I would transfer money into the food account. Okay. So why am I doing this? Why am I transferring money into the food account? Because we know that we now have $1,000 every 2 weeks for food. And that was all in food, right? So that was eating out, that was groceries and things of that nature. And we turn it into a game. Because guess what? Had plenty of cash on hand. But when that $1,000 was gone, that $1,000 was gone. So me and my wife, we kind of played this game like, ooh wee, that food account is down to 150 bucks, right? Or 50 bucks. And wifey said to me one day, she's like, whoo, hey, let me go in and see what we got in the freezer and start defrosting food, right? You know what I'm saying? So I look up and she defrosted some chili one day that we had in the freezer, right? Some salad. Like you start finding things to eat. Again, it's a conditioning. So many of us have been so conditioned to be like, hey, if I want it, I'm gonna go get it. Right. Hey, man, we need to eat out. I'm gonna put it on the credit card. Right. Versus saying, man, we don't have it because we had a cash, right? But because we separated our money out into these envelopes and said this is the food envelope, we had to get creative, right? So hey, I look up and we're making a tuna salad, right? My daughter is making tuna melts. Again, it's a skill set because though we had the cash and though we have the credit capacity to go out and buy almost anything that we want for that matter, right? We're not doing that. We're saying, hey, this is what we got to spend these 2 weeks, and when it's gone, it's gone. So it made my wife a better shopper, right? Because now when she's going out, it's like, ooh, I'm going to Aldi's. Man, I got $100 to spend, right? Or hey, we're going out to eat. You know what, y'all? Shoot, we're on a budget. My inside joke is I'm quick to tell my kids, hey, we are on a recession, right? You know what I'm saying? It is the Jeffries family recession. We ain't spending it. We ain't got it. So things that you stop doing, you stop buying beverages. Side note, do you know these breakfast spots would charge you $3 for a cup of tea? Pause. A cup of tea? It's hot water in a bag. What are you talking about? $3 will buy you a 24.50 pack of tea. And they're charging. So we just like, no, everybody gets water, right? I might order a hot water, which they won't charge me for, and I give me a little lemon squeeze in it, right? But you start to actually be a better steward of money. So let me ask you this question. And I can speak to this from personal experience, and I can speak to this just from working with clients because I work with thousands of clients a year. And if we took away your credit card today, all your credit cards, and you could only use your cash to cover your food, how would your eating habits change? Right? How creative would you get? My wife has a garden. Like we got a nice sized house, but we don't have a huge backyard because one, I didn't want to be cutting grass because that's not my jam. But she took the little space we have in the back and she has a garden. So she's growing vegetables. She's growing herbs. She made some tea the other day, some phenomenal mint tea. And she's like, yeah, that was from our garden, right? So again, we go out and pay for some iced tea, some mint iced tea, and spend, $3 for 16 ounces, or she makes a big gallon of it with the tea leaves that we're growing in the backyard. So let that sink in for a second. So I'm gonna ask you that question again. And right, if you did not have access to credit cards, how would your food habits change? Matter of fact, do this. Go and look at how much money you spend a month on food. I had a client tell me one time that they were spending a couple grand a month on DoorDash, right? Now, here's the deal. I rock with some DoorDash. Matter of fact, we did DoorDash last night because my daughter just had ankle surgery. She's sitting on the couch recovering. She's like, man, I want a blizzard. My wife said, you know what? I didn't get a blizzard that one day. I said, you know what? I ain't going nowhere because shoot, I had an eye issue because I got hit in the eye with a branch when we was out working on one of our properties. So we ordered, DoorDash and ordered some blizzards. We sure did. So I'm not hating on nobody ordering DoorDash. I mean, for a period of time, DoorDash owned me. So I'm not hating on anybody ordering DoorDash. But have you looked at the fees with DoorDash? How much extra you're paying for that convenience, right? Are those things that you could be making at home, right? Getting back to, the core of, hey, let's cook together, let's grow our own food, let's not overeat, right? Like all of those things, family. Man, being broke can be a blessing. So though we're not broke, we have created a game about being broke. So when this $1,000, it just happened to us here recently, the reason I wanted to do this training, when she's like, ooh, Man, babe, we had AU tournaments and we spent money eating out because if y'all know anything about these AU tournaments and travel ball, by the time you done spent money on travel, food on the way there and back, food while you're there, and accommodations at the hotel, you're down a couple grand, right? So we blew through our $1,000 budget, right? Like ran completely through it. We get home, my wife was like, "Whew, well, I guess we're gonna have to figure out how to live off. I think it was like $150 left or something along those lines, right?" And it's a game. So we gamified being broke. Well, we can do that because we're blessed to have those cash reserves. But how do you get more cash reserves? What if you started acting like you were broke today? What if you said, "Hey, this is all we have to spend"? That's one of the benefits of, kind of going back to this whole profit first piece, which I'm going to share with you guys again here. That whole envelope system. So we recently another story here. We have a client, we have well, all of our clients, any of our clients that we work with, any of our business clients that we work with, we put on the profit first system. And let me bring that back up here. So again, right, that profit first system is that envelope system where money comes into the income account and then is divided into these other accounts, right? So I remember we had this one client that we brought on businesses doing a couple $1 million a year, and you know the owner was putting their hand in the cookie jar, right? Whenever they wanted something personal, they would put their money into the business account and take those dollars out and go spend. So they felt like they had unlimited supply of money, but then we get into these cash flow crunches with the business and didn't understand why. So we started to actually use the implemented the profit first model. So what ended up happening is, and I'll just show like some easy numbers here. Let's call it $10,000. Let's say that the business collected $10,000 and $10,000 went into the business account, right? The income account for the month. Well, most of us, all of us, not just most of us, all of us, if we're looking at that balance, we'd be like, man, we got $10,000, right? We got some money to spend. But when you start to divide these into different envelopes, right? And you say, okay, 10,000 is in there, but this 10,000 is going towards savings. That's what we consider profit. So let's say we have, we're going to call this, let's go back to those same percentages that we had earlier, right? So we had 10%, we had 15% for taxes, we had, let's call it 30% for operating expense. And then that leaves us with 30 plus 15 plus 10, right? Minus 100, we're going to call this 45% here, right? So 10% or $1,000 went into the savings account for you not to touch. Then 1,500 went into the tax account. That's the IRS money. Can't touch that. 45%, right? Or we're going to call this owner's pay, well, owner's compensation, OC. 4,500 went into that account. Okay. And then you had this other 30%, right, into the OPEX account. So that's 3,000, right? So where normally somebody would look in and be like, oh my goodness, man, I got, $10,000 to spend. No, you don't have $10,000 to spend. You have $4,500 to spend. That's what you have, not 10, right? Because the other money is already allocated for. So when my clients, we started to install this system into my clients' business finances. I remember he said to me that he's like, man, I feel like I'm broke. Yeah, because you were looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars going to millions of dollars really for the year going into this one account. And you thought I had a bunch of money to spend until we started to allocate those dollars into the different envelopes or the different buckets. It's like, man, I only have 4,500 to spend. Well, what did that force him to do? He felt broke. So now he had to become a better steward of his cash, not only on the personal side, which was his owner's compensation, but also to on the business side. Hey, you just can't go writing checks and be willy-nilly with the money because in this case, you only have $3,000 to run your business. You don't have $10,000 to run your business. So the profit first model creates a feeling of being broke, right? You can do this with your own personal finances. But let's say that you were allocating dollars to your savings or your let's say you didn't have to allocate to your taxes, but you was moving money, to your investments. And you say, hey, well, this is what I got left to spend on me or spend on fun. What you're doing is you're creating an environment where you feel broke. You're like, man, I ain't got it, right? Because it's not in that envelope. If it's not in that envelope, you cannot use it. This is why this system can create, this is being broke can create a wealth system. It creates you can create an envelope system where you now become a better steward of your money. I got to share this quick story. Um, I recently helped one of our one of our clients, set this system up for the business. And I remember having a call with them here recently, and her and her husband were just ecstatic. I was like, "How are things going?" They said, "Perry, we have been using the profit first system, and oh my gosh, this is amazing." She said, "Now that I have a system that tells me where the money should go, we now she said we are getting so many more. She's a realtor. We are closing so much more business now." And she said, "I know it. Why?" I said, "Well, why?" She said, "God is blessing me for finally being a good steward of money." She said, "When you helped me create a system that helped me determine where the money should go, we start getting more income. She started seeing more commissions, and those commissions are starting to flow." And I remember her husband sitting in the back, what I'm saying? We're on a Zoom call. He's sitting in the back at another desk, and he's like, he turned around, "Perry, I can go to the gas station and not trip out about whether or not we got enough money to pay for gas." And mind you, family, this is a couple who are both doing doing six figures. They're doing probably, not probably, they're doing over $200,000 a year in income. Right. People with six figures still feel broke as well if you do not have a system to tell you where the money goes. Because if there's no system to tell you where the money goes, the money is going to go places it should not go, and you're not going to have anything to show for it, family. Right. So, anyway, going back to this envelope system, right? And kind of the budget that my wife and I created. When that envelope is empty, it's empty. There's no swiping, there's no magic money. You have to get creative and figure it out, right? So this is how being broke on purpose with our food budget taught us resourcefulness, right? It taught us to be more creative. It's about building the discipline that creates lasting wealth because we can now apply that system to everything. Right now, I know my daughter who had a surgery. Big shout out to Mike and a healthy, speedy recovery. She's out in the other room listening to this YouTube right now. What up, Micah? Big shout out to Micah. Right. But here's the deal. This is a lesson she's learning. When we pay her, money goes. Money, we give her some money. So let's say she makes $100. We might give her $50 to spend, but 25 bucks goes into her savings and 25 bucks goes into her investment account. So she's learning the power of being broke as well. Big shout out to Damon John, what I'm saying? Our favorite shark on the Shark Tank. I had an opportunity to work with Damon when he wrote out one of his books. But one of my favorite books from Damon is The Power of Broke, right? And when I was having this conversation with my wife, I was like, man, we are so blessed to be broke, right? Because you learn how to get more creative. Oh my goodness, right? Okay. So I want to share that story with you, but now let's talk about how to really supercharge this feeling of being broke and how it can really turn into a blessing. Imagine right now your income was cut in half, right? So let's say you make $10,000 a month. Let's cut that income in half and chop it down to 5,000, right? So let's say that both, what I'm saying, whether it was you and your spouse were making 5,000 a piece, or you was making 10,000 by yourself, whatever the case may be, cut that in half. Now sit back, and I want that anxiety to hit you. I want that feeling of, oh snap, how am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to pay the bills? Okay. Now let that anxiety rush over your body. And now what we're going to do is reframe that anxiety. We're going to reframe that scarcity mindset. And now we're going to reframe it into, okay, what is this lesson that's being taught, right? Because again, scarcity breeds innovation. What is the lesson that's being taught right here, right? Um, because you're like, all right, well, Perry, I can't cover my bills. What's the lesson here? All right, now let's look at your budget. What things can you get rid of? What subscriptions can you get rid of that you're not using? What streaming services can you get rid of that you're not using? Where you're overpaying? Are you going to, what I'm saying, the most expensive grocery stores? Can you get that at a discount grocery store? My wife loves Aldi, right? Hey, what I'm saying, can you renegotiate your costs on your cell phone? Can you renegotiate your costs on your insurance, right? Insurance skyrocketed here recently. Can you have a conversation and shop around? Like, if you income was cut in half today, you went from 10,000 to 5,000, where could you make the adjustments? So that's your first step. That's step number one. Where do I make the adjustments? Step number two, you may be like, man, Perry, I've cut everything I can cut, right? Now let's go into an abundance mindset. How can you now go out and create some additional streams of income, right? Here's the deal, y'all. When we look at some of the wealthiest people in the world, right? And let's go with the ones who did not inherit their wealth, right? But some of the wealthy people in the world who came from very modest means. Do you think, well, why do you think they became wealthy? Because they were broke. And out of being broke, they figured out, hey, I'm tired of being broke. What can I do to get unbroke? Right? Those are your success stories. And it's a ton of them out there, y'all. It's a ton of them out there, right? When you look at, when you start to listen to people's stories like, hey, why did you create this system? Why did you invent this thing? Why did you start this business? Many times it goes back to a really easy conversation. Man, I was broke and I had to figure it out. But unfortunately, or fortunately, but I'm gonna call it unfortunately, and many of us have never been truly broke. You may have been lean, but you've never been broke. Okay, let me give you, man, I got stories all day about this whole broke piece. We're gonna have to turn this into a broke series. Another story I'm gonna share here with you before we finish up. Those who don't know, I used to be a personal trainer. I'm still a strength and conditioning coach and things of that nature. But I've been in the finance business for over 20 years. But fresh out of college, I became a strength and conditioning coach. Got took a position at a very large gym where I was managing 30 personal trainers or so, and I was their sales manager. And I would have these. This cracks me up even laughing, even thinking about this story. So, um, as their sales manager, right, I would help these personal trainers grow their businesses. Now they're 100% commission, right? So if they don't go out and offer their services to our clientele at the gym, they don't eat. We'll give them a little something. We're paying them a little something just to pay them a little something, but it was a draw that they had to pay back. So effectively, they were 100% commission. So I remember sitting down with this one trainer, and still a good friend of mine to this day. And I was like, "Hey man, I'm looking at their numbers, and they're not producing right a whole lot here." And I had this conversation with him. I said, "Hey man, your numbers pretty low here. What's going on?" He's like, "Yeah man, it just, I'm not comfortable walking up to people I don't know and talking to them, and I'm just not really good at sales and yada yada yada." And so I'm listening to him intently, right? And then I asked him this question. I said, "Hey, what did you eat for lunch today?" I said, "What did you eat for lunch today?" And he said, "Oh, and All the personal trainers typically eat pretty healthy, right? Oh, I had, boneless, skinless chicken breasts and brown rice and broccoli and da da da. I said, oh, okay. And what did you have for dinner yesterday? Oh man, I had salmon and da da da. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I like, okay. I said, that's the problem. I said, what? I said, you're eating too good, right? You're not hungry because if you were hungry, you would be more creative. If you were broke, because obviously you're not broke. Yeah, you're not producing a lot of revenue or commission here for yourself, but obviously there's some money someplace. So either you're putting this on a credit card or your parents are still giving you money or something is going on, right? Because you're able to eat, grilled chicken and rice and vegetables and salmon and fish and go out to happy hours with the other trainers and buy shots and tequila and vodka and all of these things, right? I said, that's the problem. I said, here's the deal. You're going to leave this meeting with me today and you're going to, and I said, now here, I said, when I started making money? Because when I first was hired, I was hired as a trainer. And I started making money because I was down in Columbus. I was staying, my mom had a friend down here who was going to allow me to stay. And this story I'm telling them. And they were allowing me to stay with them until, I kind of got my feet underneath me. Well, unbeknownst to me, the first week I move in to stay at this friend's house, I'm staying in their spare room. They come in and say, hey, so how long are you going to be here? Because I want to put my office in here. And I'm like, oh, snap. They don't want me here. This ain't, hey, stay here as long as you want till you get your life in order. It's like, oh, no, I want you out of here in less than 30 days. I'm like, oh, snap. So, I go on the grind and I'm eating choke sandwiches. This is what I told the personal trainer I was training. I said, have you ever had a choke sandwich? And they said, a choke sandwich? Now what's a choke sandwich? I said, well, while you're eating, you know, chicken breasts and rice and protein shakes and all of the things, I was eating choke sandwiches. That's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with no jelly and no milk. You just choking that bad boy down. And he looked at me like eyes wide open, like, oh. I said, yeah, that's why you ain't selling shit because you're not broke. You know what I'm saying? You're comfortable. And two, I said, I didn't have a bed, and this is honest God's true family. I was in Columbus, Ohio. I was about a year into my position as a personal trainer, and I did not own a bed. I had a dresser drawer. When I finally moved into my apartment, I said, I don't need a bed because shoot, I'm broke. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to be comfortable. I need to get up and get on this grind, right? So I did not get a bed until my mom called me one day and she said, hey, your dad is coming down to visit. He better not be sleeping on the floor when he get there. Because I had me a little leather couch. I had a dresser drawer for my clothes. And other than that, what I need to be sleeping for? Like, why are you sleeping all day if you're broke? So granted here, I could have reached out to my parents at any point in time and said, hey man, can y'all let me hold something? I was like, no, I'm out here on my own. So I was eating choke sandwiches. I was sleeping on the floor or sleeping on my couch. And the day I got a mattress, I had been in my position almost a year making good money. And I went out and got a mattress because my mom said my dad better not sleep on the floor when he gets in town. So I told this story to my trainer and I said, this is the problem. You're too damn comfortable. When you're comfortable, you don't have to be prudent. When you're comfortable, you don't have to be frugal. You need to get uncomfortable, and sometimes you need to create it. Sometimes you need to gamify it the way me and my wife do. We have plenty of cash and investments and access to capital and lines of credit and things of that nature, but our food budget is $1,000 every 2 weeks. Right now, I know, wife, you have to go out and get some food today because again, we burned through our $2,000 budget with AU, so she probably had to put it on one of the cards. You know what I'm saying? Because that account is pretty much depleted. But what we do every Sunday is we have a finance meeting where we take the cash from the food account and we pay down the credit card. Right? So again, we gamify it. We create a situation where we're broke, and everybody can do this. And I suggest you do it. Let me ask you a question. This is a question I asked my wife. We were talking about this whole, being broke piece and, running out of money in our food account, cracking up, laughing at each other. And I said, hey, babe, could you eat the same thing every day for 30 days? Because I keep coming across, clients and prospects who have all of this damn credit card debt. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. And I'm like, my Lord, what are you buying? Because you're not buying cash flowing assets with this credit card debt, with this debt. You're buying consumer stuff. You're buying fashion clothes. You're eating out. You're at all the events. You're traveling to the NBA finals. You're at this, you're at that. But your credit card debt is killing you. And it's like, what in the world? And so I asked my wife, I said, could you eat the same thing every day? If I said, hey, for us to win in our finances, we're going to eat potatoes and onions and eggs every day. That is going to be our primary meal every day. We're going to drink water, potatoes and onions, and scrambled eggs, maybe with some cheese every day. Could you do that every day? Let me ask y'all that question. Like, how successful do you really want to be? Because if you're broke, and this is how you know that you're broke, and I'm actually going to do a whole new training on this because I don't have time to go through it today, but I'm going to give you guys 5 signs that you're broke. Okay. You're always waiting on your next paycheck. Like, man, I need the next paycheck to come in because I got bills to pay. You're always waiting on the next paycheck. I remember there was a point in time when I first got into real estate, I was making so much money in real estate that I forgot when my direct deposit was going to hit from my primary job. Right? If you're waiting for that check, like, man, I need this check to hit, or I'm not going to be able to pay these bills, then that's going to be an issue, right? So that's how you know one sign that you're broke. Second sign that you're broke, you have no margin. After your bills and expenses are paid, there's nothing left. No savings, no investments. You're just in survival mode. Hey, I paid the bills, y'all. And anything else I want to do, if I'm going to go out and hang out with the fellas and have a drink, man, I got to put on a credit card, man. If I'm going to go and hang out with the girls and brunch, I got to put on a credit card. There's nothing left. And you have nothing in savings or investments. Let me be transparent with you guys. Being a business owner, right, with fluctuating income, we have points and times where the credit card runs up, right? And the conversation we was having with my wife one day because she hates to see balances on credit cards. But when I showed her our balance sheet, every debt we have today, we could pay off tomorrow if we wanted to. Every one. We just choose to cash flow it. Right? So we have savings and investments. We could wipe out every debt we have today, minus our mortgage, right? So again, sign number two that you're broke. After bills and expenses are paid, there's nothing left. You don't have any money to save. You don't have money to invest. Third sign that you're broke. You can't handle a $5,000 emergency without stress. 500. I'm sorry, not a $5,000 emergency. My apologies. A $500 emergency. I saw a quote one day. Let me see if I can pull it up. It was, less than but 90% of Americans do not have $500 in emergency fund. If a $500 emergency came up and you can't handle that without stress, then you're broke. Four, you're renting everything, including your life. Your time is not your own. Your lifestyle is not your own. You can't come and go the way that you want to. Your future or your calendar belongs to somebody else. So you're a boss, you're a bank, you're a bill collector. You're renting everything, right? That's a mindset shift. One of the core family values that we have with our family is we call it champions, is the acronym. And the O is for ownership. We want to own our time. We want to own real estate. We want to own businesses. We want to be the boss, right? Are you the boss or are you the tenant? Ask yourself that question. Whew, Lord have mercy. And number five, your money buys comfort but no freedom. You got the dopest shoes, man. You had all the events. You got the fancy cars, right? You look great to the eye, but you have no time freedom because you got to show up and trade your time for money, because if you don't, you're going to lose all of those things that from an appearance standpoint makes you look like you got it going on, right? So here's the deal. Broke isn't a dollar amount. Being broke is a lifestyle without ownership, without margin, and without freedom. And let me let you into a harsh truth. There are many six-figure earners who are broke because they don't own anything, they have no margin, no cushion, and they don't have any time freedom. Whew, goodness gracious. So here's the deal, family. Embrace the broke. Being broke can be a blessing, right? And even if you just gamify it the way we do, like, hey, this is what we got to spend. Next thing y'all know, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, wifey brought out stuff out the freezer. Like, yep, I found this in here. There's some catfish in there that I took out the freezer that I'm supposed to fix. That's probably went bad because I think I took it out 2 or 3 days ago, right? But here's the deal. If you gamify it and start to say, hey, this is all we're going to spend on eating out. Hey, this is all we're going to spend this month on entertainment. Hey, this is all we're going to spend, right? If you gamify it and just even create a system that you feel broke, then you're going to see results because you have to have margin. You have to have some of your money. Like, granted, some of your money got to go towards bills. Totally understand that, right? But some of your money has to go towards your savings. Some of your money has to go towards your investments. Some of those dollars have to go towards your legacy. Don't let your legacy be one of overspend, looking like we got money, but being broke. Turn broke into a blessing. All right, family, man. I hope this video was valuable to you here. Be sure to, on YouTube, to like, share, comment. Be sure to subscribe. You know, our goal is to get up to 1,000 followers here in the next 30, 60 days. Love you for you guys to help us out. So if this blessed you, if this got you thinking a little bit, share this, right? The blessing, how being broke can be a blessing. All right, family. Peace.